Hello and welcome to Useful Idiots. I'm Katie Halper.
I'm Mary Mette. Thank you so much for being here. Our website, as always, is usefulidiotspodcast.com. Go there to support the show and get bonus content.
And you definitely want to do that if you haven't already, because honestly, guys, Norman Finkelstein said some things that we think are really important, but could have gotten us perhaps kicked off certain things. So the only way to access it is by becoming members at usefulidiotspodcast.com.
And on this week's show, we're going to hear from returning guest Diana Buttu. She is an attorney, a former advisor to the Palestinian Authority. And we'll be checking in with her on all the latest, including Israel's attack on the flotilla, trying to break the siege of Gaza, and all the latest in the nightmare that is the Gaza genocide.
For Democrat Suck, this is kind of a double suckage. So we're going to take a look at what House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries had to say about another sucky Democrat, that is Mayor Eric Adams, who recently announced that he will not be running against Zohran Mamdani.
Mayor Adams and I started our careers at the same time, him in the state Senate and myself in the state Assembly. And I respect his contributions to the city of New York, his contributions as mayor, and of course before that as state senator, and perhaps even most importantly, as someone who wore the uniform to protect and serve.
All right, so it's nice that he is expressing his respect for Eric Adams. I mean, he left out certain things from his bio that we probably should credit Adams for doing, like allowing ICE back into Rikers Island, or basically being involved in bribery and fraud that were mysteriously dropped by Trump's Justice Department. There was an actual indictment for that was dropped. And he also cracked down on illegal immigration and violent crime in New York City in ways that were far from constitutional. Maybe we should also give Adams credit for meeting with wanted war criminal Netanyahu. Or shrinking the budget for the New York City Public Library. So all of those things are examples of what we should remember Eric Adams for. And it would be nice if Hakeem Jeffries spoke about Zohran Mamdani with a bit of the, well, I would say enthusiasm, but honestly, I've never seen Hakeem Jeffries be enthusiastic about anything. I've never really seen him express emotion. So that's an unfair demand. But it would be nice if he said something positive about Zohran Mamdani the way he did about Eric Adams, especially since apparently he supports Democrats.
Yeah, he still hasn't endorsed Zohran Mamdani. He's promising he's going to come to a decision at some point. We're all waiting with bated breath. Honestly, at this point, I think it would probably help Zohran Mamdani not to be endorsed by Jeffries the way things are going. But that doesn't stop Hakeem Jeffries, of course, from weighing in on how wonderful Eric Adams was. And, look, I am going to miss Eric Adams as a personality.
He's
most
funny.
Entertaining politician of my lifetime. There's just so many great hits. And on top of that, he's also a vegan, so you have to respect that about his lifestyle, among many other things.
Yes, but one thing that I will miss about him is he has an almost Trumpian ability to lie without concern for how debunkable his lies are. And so one thing he says is that he's a vegan, but he also, I think, admitted to eating fish or was exposed to eating some kind of animal product. So
big deal. I think vegans get a pescatarian exclusion. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm a pescatarian, poultritarian, or whatever, but I would never. I actually think it's like stolen valor to pretend to be a vegan if you eat fish or any animal products. You're not even allowed to eat eggs, Aaron. Not even eggs. So this is one of those rare moments where we disagree. It's a divided house on Useful Idiots when it comes to veganism. What do we got for Republican Suck?
For Republican Suck, let's turn to J.D. Vance. Now, he's been the public face of the Trump administration in justifying why they've let the government shut down. And why is that? Well, it's because those Democrats and all their malfeasance insisted on preserving subsidies for people receiving Obamacare. And Republicans couldn't tolerate that. So they decided to shut down the government over it. And J.D. Vance, one of the arguments he's making is that Democrats shut down the government because they really want undocumented immigrants to have health care. And his argument in favor of that is not that undocumented immigrants were covered by the Affordable Care Act, by Obamacare, because they're not. His argument is that Democrats insist on treating undocumented immigrants when they come to the emergency room. And here is J.D. Vance explaining his case.
If you look at the legislative text that they gave us, they tried to turn on two separate provisions that would give healthcare benefits to illegal aliens. Number one, if you're an American citizen, you've been to a hospital in the last few years, you probably noticed that wait times are especially large, and very often somebody who's there in the emergency room waiting is an illegal alien, very often a person who can't even speak English. Why do those people get healthcare benefits at hospitals paid for by American citizens? The answer is a decision made by the Biden administration that the Trump administration, working with congressional Republicans, undid. We turned off that money spigot to healthcare funding for illegal aliens. The Democrats, in their legislative text, want to turn it back on.
Yes, the issue here is that Democrats insist on not letting people die in the emergency room because that's the law. And it's been a long time federal law, even before Biden, that if you need an emergency health care, you're not going to be turned away. And certainly, if a hospital gives you the emergency care you need to live, they're not going to be stuck footing the bill. Because if they're stuck footing the bill, someone would go bankrupt. So to keep hospitals open and to give people emergency treatment, which a lot of people need, the government's going to cover the bill. And so JD Vance is saying that Democrats basically are causing chaos because they insist on not letting people who need emergency health care die, even if they happen to not have legal status in the U.S.
Right. If you committed the crime of not being born here, you should die, basically, if you get sick.
And this comes as another Republican talking point has been debunked. And this is the talking point which was behind their recent cut to Medicaid, that people who are receiving Medicaid are just lazy and that they have to be basically forced to go to work in order to receive healthcare benefits. Well, check out this study from BMJ Research. New BMJ research finds the implementation of work requirements with Medicaid expansion in Georgia did not increase health insurance coverage or employment. So basically, what the study says is that comparing Georgia with other states that did not have a Medicaid expansion and that are around Georgia, that basically there's no correlation between forcing people to go to work to receive health care and reducing unemployment. So this whole talking point from Republicans, again, is if you needed more proof, newly debunked by this study, which I'm sure, of course, will get roundly ignored.
Well, yeah, lots of blood on the hands of Republicans and lots of blood on the hands of Democrats for being feckless. Although, again, they're better on this, but they do not provide a viable opposition to Republicans. And in doing so, they are Republican enablers. All right. So Isn't That Weird? Let's take a look at an interesting story unfolding in the MAGA sphere. So on Wednesday, news broke that Kash Patel, director of the FBI, canceled the Anti-Defamation League's ties to the organization, citing that, quote, James Comey wrote love letters to the ADL and embedded FBI agents with them, a group that ran disgraceful ops spying on Americans, end quote. And then Patel said in his post, that era is over. This FBI won't partner with political fronts masquerading as watchdogs. Which is weird and awkward because obviously Trump and Republicans and Democrats are very tied to the Anti-Defamation League, which is basically just a pro-Israel organization, right? It has nothing to do with defamation. What they really do is call anyone critical of Israel anti-Semitic and help whoever's president crack down on free speech and protests that's related to Palestine. But that's not the only awkward thing that's happening in the ADL land. We also have a fight between Elon Musk and the ADL. So it was discovered that Christian identity was included in the ADL's glossary of extremism, and Christian identity not as like a classification, but as an organization. So that's a hate group, apparently. So that was Elon Musk was upset about that. Also, the real crime, though, was that the ADL classified the late Charlie Kirk's Turning Points USA as extremists, too. And so Elon Musk lashed out at the ADL. Let's take a look at what he had said. The ADL is a hate group. All right. So Elon Musk is like, I'll take that hate group categorization and raise it and call you one. And that was in itself in response to Cernovich, a hateful person in himself on the alt-right, tweeting out, the larger problem with the ADL designating Turning Points USA as a hate group is that the FBI allows the ADL to provide this training to agents. The ADL is deeply embedded within law enforcement. This must be removed immediately. Now, it's true. I mean, what's awkward about this, it's very weird, is when people who you don't like make a point that's actually good about other people who you don't like. But what came next is that the ADL folded to this pressure, as you'll see in the following tweet. With over 1,000 entries written over many years, the ADL Glossary of Extremism has served as a source of high-level information on a wide range of topics for years. At the same time, an increasing number of entries in the glossary were outdated. We also saw a number of entries intentionally misrepresented and misused. And so they have decided to delete the entire glossary. I don't know. I don't know who to side with between Elon Musk and the ADL. And it makes me sad knowing that it was just not so long ago that the ADL helped launder Elon Musk's image when he gave the what I saw as a Nazi salute by cutting him some slack that they never cut people who are not Israel supporters. So a lot of gossip over there in that area of the world.
Well, there's a classic case of let them fight. It's a rare case where Israel first takes a loss, because what do you do here in the situation where you have the ADL going after Charlie Kirk's group, and Charlie Kirk was very close to the Trump administration, and there's a rare case where they decided to put Charlie Kirk's group over Israel first. Right. So very rare L for Israel first, but I'm sure the ADL and the Trump administration will find a way to make up. And the ADL's already on the case by deleting their entire thing just because they got Elon Musk and other MAGA people mad. Of course, ADL would never, ever, ever delete anything at the behest of people who think Palestinians are equal human beings, even though the ADL constantly smears people. And in fact, the FBI has used the ADL's data to go after so-called anti-Semitism, which simply means, as you said, criticism of Israel.
Yeah, and before we move off of this story, I do just want to walk back, take a stroll down memory lane, and look at the better times when the ADL, as I said earlier, tweeted, "This is a delicate moment. It's a new day, and yet so many are on edge. Our politics are inflamed, and social media only adds to the anxiety. It seems that Elon Musk made an awkward gesture in a moment of enthusiasm, not a Nazi salute. But again, we appreciate that people are on edge. In this moment, all sides should give one another a bit of grace, perhaps even the benefit of the doubt, and take a breath. This is a new beginning. Let's hope for healing and work toward unity in the months and years ahead." To which, perhaps the weirdest part of all, Elon Musk responded, "Thanks, guys," with the laughing, crying emoji.
Yeah, and again, remember who Elon Musk is. He, in the past, made some anti-Semitic comments. Right. He got a backlash from groups like the ADL. He went to Israel, kissed the ring, went to October 7th sites with Netanyahu, cracked down on pro-Palestine speech. And ultimately, that's where everyone here will get along and forgive each other and make up, because they all hate anyone around the world who's in solidarity with Palestinians. So I don't think this rift will be very long lasting. All right, moving on to Isn't That Terrible? Are you socially media savvy? Do you have an interest in world affairs? And do you have no ethics whatsoever? Well, if you said yes to all those questions, then maybe you can go be paid a very handsome sum to promote Israeli propaganda on social media. Check this out from Nick Cleveland Stout. He's with the Quincy Institute. And check out what he found. Israel is paying influencers $7,000 per post. That's right. Israel, through some shady, shadowy, dark money groups, one called Project Esther, is paying people up to $7,000 per post on social media, as long as they whitewash genocide. And this has become very, very normal. It's gone to a lot of people. And this is the kind of content that this payment scheme has produced.
Imagine supporting people who start wars just to lose the wars so they can cry about it and then try it all again.
You must see anti-Semites are literally obsessed with Jews. Now walk with me.
Wait, okay. Why is that even worth commenting on? Like, obviously, and I mean, okay, anti-Zionists are not anti-Semites, but I like the way he thinks that he's delivering a major insight by saying anti-Semites are obsessed with Jews. Like, yeah, that's the job of anti-Semites.
I just can't get past the idea that someone would think that anyone would find these two individuals engaging to want to listen to what they have to say.
Walk with me.
Yeah. It's. I mean, honestly, in fact, I can't even watch any more of this video. Let's go through one more example.
That's his thing, by the way, is walk with me.
Hey guys, wow, I'm feeling good about the news out of DC today. I love seeing Bibi and Trump together and their camaraderie. I think it's just makes me really happy. And I'm happy to see them on great terms after the drama with Qatar, which by the way, I never understood.
Wow. Well, where's the checkbook? Let's pay these people $7,000 per post. But, it makes sense, right? If you're going to be a shill for a genocidal regime, I mean, yeah, it's going to be expensive, because who is going to sell their soul just for that cheap? I mean, it's very hard to find anyone who ideologically is willing to stand up and be behind Israel anymore, just because what it's doing is so horrific.
I mean, maybe like if she does enough of those posts, she can buy herself a studio or something. Because I'm not going to lie, I'm Israel. I'm a little upset that someone's going to phone it in so much. Just like giving an update from a moving car, no lights. At least get a ring light for your phone.
Right. Or that's like deliberate. Like they're like, try to pretend as if you're just a casual social media influencer. Like you're on your way. You know what I mean? Like keep it as realistic. Yeah. As realistic as possible. Who knows?
Oh, yeah, you're right. Right. They're like, don't make it clear that we're paying you $7,000 per post.
Yeah. But look, what's very clear here is that our elites understand that the only way to get people to be on board with Israel is through propaganda campaigns and outright brainwashing. In fact, check out this other post. This also is from the Quincy Institute. Eli Clifton. Check out what he found in a leaked email from the CEO of Oracle, which is owned by the Ellisons, who are buying up CBS News, giving it to Barry Weiss in most likelihood, and also maybe even buying CNN. Leaked email reveals communication between the company leading the TikTok purchase and former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak. We believe we have to embed the love and respect for Israel in the American culture, wrote then Oracle CEO Safra Katz. So what does that mean, embed love and respect for Israel? It means brainwash people. Because if love and respect for Israel was natural, you wouldn't have to talk about embedding it. It would just kind of develop organically. That's kind of, after all, like what love is, right? So, and this is the company whose chief investors, whose owners, the Ellisons, they're now going to be partly in charge of TikTok after the Trump administration forced its sale. So this is the only way to get people still on board with Israel is through outright buying propaganda through social media influencers and brainwashing.
In a way, it's a nice reminder that people on that side need to be paid to say what they have to say, whereas people on our side don't ever get paid to do this. We just do it because we have this weird thing where we oppose genocide. But for other people, I guess genocide is, if it's not already their kink, they're happy to get money for it.
And those have been your 4 basic food groups. For this week's interview, we have a returning guest, Diana Buttu. She is a Palestinian attorney, former legal advisor to the PLO. She joins us from Haifa.
Welcome back to the show, Diana. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Aaron.
So there's so much terrible news to cover. I guess we can start off with the fact that Wednesday night, the IOF began to attack and stop the Global Sumud Flotilla. They kidnapped activists, including Greta Thunberg and Thiago Ávila, and many more in international waters. And at least 450 people have been taken hostage in a 14-hour-long interception. Some of the fleet, however, managed to sail closer to Gaza than any other had before. So what is your reaction to this news?
Katie, we've been spending the past 2 years watching a live stream genocide. And here we watched 450 people being kidnapped and acts of piracy. And still, nobody is doing anything about it. And plus the fact that it shows you the lengths to which Israel is willing to go to actually starve the people of Gaza. I mean, the whole thing is it's mind-blowing to see what they're willing to do just to be able to starve people in Gaza.
Yeah. And of course, it's shocking, but it's not shocking. I guess it's disturbing, but predictable that the Western media, especially US media, is totally ignoring the story.
Yes, and this is, as we've said, 450 people. I think just 450 people just taken from ships, and people, and it's being ignored. It's being ignored.
The Israeli argument was, well, listen, if this is just an aid mission, then give us the aid. We'll inspect it for security reasons, and then we'll make sure it gets to Gaza. How do you respond to that, Diana?
Well, first, Aaron, over the course of the past 2 years, they haven't gotten the aid to Gaza. This is the reason that we're seeing these people starve, that we're seeing Palestinians starve. It's important to keep in mind that Yoav Gallant, who is the former Israeli defense minister, came out immediately and said there will be no food, no fuel, no water, no electricity, nothing going into Gaza. And it's for that reason that he is now wanted by the International Criminal Court because of starvation. So the argument that they're just going to inspect it and then bring it into Gaza is false. Plus, we've already seen that they have abducted people in the past with these other ships, and that aid also didn't get into Gaza either. This is just pure piracy. They're just going onto ships, stealing the stuff, stealing the ships, and then harming the people, and that's it. So if they wanted aid to get into Gaza, they would have done so, but they've made it clear that the aim is to starve Gaza, and that's why we're seeing people starve. That's why we're seeing children starve at this point.
You know, a lot of people were excited because the flotilla was briefly accompanied by warships from Spain, Italy, and a ship from Turkey that helped a boat that was having some issues. But when things got challenging, the boats pulled out. What is your response to this? And why do you think that they sent warboats in the first place if they weren't going to be there to protect the flotilla?
I'm not at all surprised that they didn't continue, because then it becomes an issue of NATO and all these sorts of things. So I'm not at all surprised. And why they did it in the first place, I think they wanted to ensure safe passage through those international waters, and that was it. But the fact that it has taken these ships and these 450 volunteers to do what governments should be doing is quite shameful. This should have been that governments are doing this work, not these 450 volunteers who risk their lives. They're now, God only knows what's happening to them right now. We know that in the past, some of them have been beaten up, and who knows what's going to happen. This is the work of governments, and what's been happening is absolutely shameful.
Well, I just wanted to show one clip, speaking of the things that would be nice that governments were doing instead of international activists, basically. But here's Thiago Ávila, a Brazilian solidarity activist, confronting the Israeli military.
You are instructed to change your course. Any further attempt to sail towards Gaza endangers your safety and places you within an active war zone. If you continue on your route and attempt to breach the naval blockade, we will stop your vessel and act to confiscate it through legal proceedings in court.
Attention, Israel offensive forces. This is Thiago Ávila from the steering committee of the Global Sumud Flotilla. We advise you that we are a humanitarian, non-violent solidarity mission to break the illegal siege imposed by Israel 18 years ago against the Palestinian people in Gaza, and to create a humanitarian corridor. We carry only food, aid, we carry water filters, we carry crutches, we carry baby formula for the people that you've been starving to death. I repeat, you've been committing genocide for 8 decades and ethnic cleansing against the Palestinian people, and that is absolutely against international law. Once again, we are in international waters, which is not your jurisdiction. We are heading to Palestinian territorial waters, which is not your jurisdiction, despite the fact that you think you can occupy that land. But all of this is completely illegal.
So, I mean, it's just shocking that it requires international activists to be stating the obvious, calling out how Israel is violating international law, not to mention committing a genocide. But, I mean, is it just totally a lost cause to think that governments, actual governments with militaries, would ever do something like what these activists are doing?
No, Katie, no. I refuse to give up and refuse to think that it's a lost cause. And I think that the tide is turning. Already we're seeing that in countries, many countries, that there is a groundswell of support, that there are people who are pushing for everything from arms embargo to end of cutting ties with Israel, and I refuse to give up. I refuse to give up, and I don't think anybody should be giving up at this point in time. Even in the United States, the belly of the beast. There is both news coverage saying that there's been a shift in terms of public opinion, as well as in terms of the ways that that voters would have voted had there been a change in the way that the Democrats had approached the last election. I'm not an American, so I can't speak to that, but I can, from looking at it from afar, say that it all looks the same. It looks like the same soup to me, and when it looks like the same soup to somebody like me, then I'm sure it looks like the same to other people as well. And at the same time, we're seeing that there are people who are saying there's time for change. It's time for change. We have to start pushing and changing and doing something. And it is happening. And that's why we saw all of these protests happening in Italy and Spain and other places around the world.
Polls in the U.S. now show that, more Americans sympathize with Palestinians than they do with Israelis. And that's stunning, just after decades and decades of pro-Israel propaganda in the U.S., which now is only intensifying with, pro-Israel oligarchs buying TikTok and further suppressing social media, and Barry Weiss poised to take over CBS News. And also a majority of Americans oppose U.S. military support to Israel. So the polls indeed are changing. But in government, there's so much to overcome. And I want to just talk about one aspect of this, which is the new so-called peace plan that Trump unveiled this week with Netanyahu. Now, according to all the available reporting, this plan underwent some changes after a meeting between Steve Witkoff, Trump's so-called Middle East envoy, Jared Kushner, his son-in-law, who's supposed to be out of government but is playing a very active role, and Ron Dermer, who's a top aide to Netanyahu. And basically what was presented as Trump's peace plan is simply a complete surrender for Palestinians. And I want to ask you about one aspect of this, because you're an attorney, you're a former legal advisor to the Palestinian Authority. And one of the demands that Netanyahu made when he appeared with Trump was that the Palestinian Authority, which is based in the West Bank, that if they're to have any role in Gaza, according to Netanyahu, which Trump endorses, then they have to radically transform, Netanyahu says. And one of his conditions was an end to what he called lawfare. So no more taking Israel to the International Criminal Court. Now, I'm curious, as a Palestinian attorney, your response to this.
So, Aaron, this model of thinking, of putting conditions on freedom, there's a word for that. It's called colonialism. And that model ended a long time ago. And the fact that they're still trying to revive it when it comes to Palestinians is really quite repugnant. So it's always the ways in which the Americans have always treated Palestinians is like to kind of pat us on the head, like, if you're good Palestinians, if you do exactly what we say, then maybe, just maybe, we will give you the things that you want. And in this case, it's a maybe, just maybe, we will give you the ability to think about aspirations rather than actually a state. It's not, they didn't say that they're going to recognize statehood. And again, that model went out a long time ago. And instead, just in the same way that they were going nuts, where I remember people saying, Ukraine should be decided by the Ukrainians. So too Palestine should be decided by Palestinians. And it shouldn't be a question of what the United States wants, what Israel wants, or what anybody wants. The fact that the country that has perpetrated genocide and the country that is funding the genocide have anything to say about what Palestinians do is so abhorrent. One. But two is I absolutely insist that these war criminals be held to account. It is like step number one that these war criminals be held to account. And I don't think that there's any discussion about that can be had on this.
And the fact that Netanyahu went out of his way to single out, again, what he called lawfare, so simply seeking accountability for war crimes at the International Criminal Court, at the International Court of Justice. What does that say to you about sort of his regime and the threat that he feels that he faces from something as simple as international law?
In terms of Netanyahu, I think it's important for us to look at why he is trying to crush all of this issue of lawfare. And it's because for somebody like Netanyahu, his world has actually gotten smaller and smaller and smaller because of the fact that he's wanted by the International Criminal Court. There are now 125 countries that he cannot go to. And this is why when he was on his way to the United Nations, that he took a route in which he had to go around a number of European countries. So his world is so small that he can only go between Israel and the United States. He's going to be hanging out in Florida, I'm sure. And that's pretty much about it. And so the reason that he wants this to stop is because he wants all of those lawsuits ended. He doesn't want to have any claims against the state of Israel. And he certainly doesn't want to have any claims against him personally or against Yoav Gallant or against any of them. And again, it's because there's a stain against him personally. And once you have these claims against Israel, it then leads to things like reparations, and it opens up the floodgates where they're not allowed to then sell arms to Israel. It affects trade relations and so on.
And this demand from Netanyahu, it comes just a few weeks after the Trump administration went out of its way to impose sanctions on 3 leading Palestinian human rights groups that are involved in trying to hold Israel to account for war crimes. Al-Haq, the Al-Mazan Center for Human Rights, and the Palestinian Center for Human Rights, which is heavily focused on Gaza. And in fact, their offices, the Palestinian Center for Human Rights, were recently destroyed by Israel in its demolitions of all those towers in Gaza City. And the Trump administration's stated reason, and I just love to hear your reaction to this, was that these groups had cooperated with cases against Israel in the International Criminal Court, quote, without Israel's consent. So because these legal groups didn't seek Israel's consent to hold it accountable for war crimes via international bodies like the ICC, therefore they have to be sanctioned. Talk about what these groups do and your reaction to this decision and how these sanctions might affect their work.
So al-Haq literally means the truth. So al-Haq means truth. And Mizan is the scales of justice. And so it's sanctioning these organizations who are focused on truth and the scales of justice because they're afraid of the truth and they're afraid of the scales of justice. And of course, they're not going to be cooperating with Israel when it comes to investigating war crimes. Nobody ever cooperates with the war criminals when it comes to investigating war crimes. That just doesn't happen. And so, that's such a dumb idea. And so this is one of the reasons that they also went after Francesca Albanese, is that they want to crush any attempt in any a way of going after Israel. Because they're afraid that this is going to lead to something larger. I want to be clear in saying that the U.S. is not a signatory to the International Criminal Court. And because it's not a signatory to the International Criminal Court, this is why they have also gone after the prosecutor. This is why they're doing their very best to go after anybody who does anything in relation to Israel. It's a whole attempt that if we can't beat them, we're just going to crush them, in the hopes that somehow these cases are going to magically go away. But actually, Aaron, I have to say something. The fact that PCHR, the other element to this is PCHR came out with their report on genocide, calling it a genocide. And when they called it a genocide, they also blew up it was like the day after that they blew up the building. And it's the fact that they're doing this, that Israel is doing this and getting away with it, there should be global outrage on the part of the NGO community, because it's not, again, just in the same way that they've attacked journalists and the same way that they've attacked medical personnel, they're now literally going after NGOs, and there should be global outrage over the fact that they're systematically going after the people who are documenting the war crimes that Israel has been carrying out.
I want to talk to you about Israel's crimes, and there's a pretty scary statement that was tweeted out by Israel's so-called defense minister, Israel Katz. He wrote, "This is the last opportunity for Gaza residents who wish to do so to move south and leave Hamas terrorists isolated in Gaza City itself, facing the IDF's ongoing operations at full force. Those who remain in Gaza will be considered terrorists and terror supporters. The IDF is prepared for all possibilities and is determined to continue its operations." So this is pretty ominous. What is your response to this statement?
They're openly saying that they're just going to kill everybody. And Katie, it's important to back up. There are hundreds of thousands of people living in Gaza City. Gaza City is in fact, it is the largest Palestinian city. And there's a number of hospitals there. And with it being the largest Palestinian city, again, you can imagine the landscape. There are they're old people, there are young people, there are people who are ill, who are in hospital. There are people who are disabled. There's just a whole range of society. And what he's saying is, if you remain, you are a fair target. Again, it's like flipping this idea of international law on its head. But they've done it now for the past 2 years. So it's like, we're just going to label anybody Hamas. And we've been warning against this now for the past 2 years. We've been saying that in the way that Israel has been operating, anybody in Gaza equals Hamas. They've said this. They've warned against this. We've been tracking their statements. That's why it's genocide. And we've been gaslit throughout this entire period. And now they're coming out very clearly and saying, if you remain in Gaza City, we're going to treat you as Hamas, and therefore we are going to get rid of you. This is, I don't think they've made it any clearer than that.
Again, I know that you're saying not to lose hope, but what can be done in the face of this impunity and in the face of this? I mean, it's not even appropriate to call it asymmetry, because that makes it sound like it's kind of a war. And we know that this is genocide, but they're just saying this out loud. And as many human rights lawyers and UN officials have pointed out, Israel's doing the work that's often required, that often needs to be done by investigative bodies that have to go through the archives and look for statements of intent of genocide, right? And they're just saying this part out loud. So what can be done?
We have to keep going. We have to keep going, Kate. We don't have the luxury of giving up hope. We just don't have that luxury. We just don't have that luxury.
And what do you think strategically the focus of supporters? Okay, disrupt, like how?
Disrupt, just keep disrupting in the ways that I think that has been disrupted now for some, at least in Europe. And making it noisy and making it loud, because without that, I don't think that it's getting the attention that it needs. They're now, I think politicians are now starting to clue in. We saw the big walkout at the United Nations, where 50 countries walked out of Netanyahu's speech. We've never seen that before. Over 100 diplomats. We're seeing that Colombia today kicked out the Israeli ambassador, and I hope that there's going to be much more of that. But it just needs to be more. Israel can't be treated as normal any longer. And I want to go back to this plan that Trump has laid out, if I may. And the reason I want to go back to it is because one of the things that Netanyahu's tried to do, and I think he's actually done successfully, is that he's flipped everything on its head. Right? So he's now made it that, one, Palestinians have to negotiate an end to their genocide, which doesn't make any sense. And number two, that if somehow Hamas does not agree, then they're to blame for their own genocide. And so again, we have to keep putting the pressure on the actual actor who's perpetrating, who's carrying out this genocide, and keep the focus on that rather than on the flip side of like, is Hamas accepting? Is Hamas not accepting? Because that's his whole point. His whole point was to flip the script. His whole point was, I'm going to go to the United States. I'm going to make this a situation which it's all about Hamas, and Hamas has to accept or not accept. And in so doing, you saw very quickly that countries that were beginning to say something, or bodies that were beginning to do something, they've suddenly had this ability to slip out. It suddenly gave them the ability to like sneak out. So whether it's UEFA or all these countries that came forward and said, yes, we support this plan, because they are looking for a way to evade their responsibilities and not put pressure on Netanyahu. So our role is to continue to keep that pressure up, keep that pressure on Israel, and not just not flip the script to focus on Hamas and blame Palestinians for the genocide.
Let's talk about the occupied West Bank. Trump recently made a big show out of claiming that he's not going to let Israel annex the West Bank, which has been a topic of increased discussion. You have ministers in Netanyahu's cabinet openly demanding that he do so. And Trump said, I'm not going to let it happen. This has to stop. And, I detected in Trump maybe some awareness that even members of his own base are aghast at how much he serves Israel. His whole thing was America first, but he's constantly putting Israel first. So this, to me, him coming out and saying this struck me as very performative, saying, I'm not going to let Israel annex the West Bank. But in real life, does it have any practical significance that Trump is saying this? And what is the reality right now, whether Israel's formally annexed the West Bank or not, about its colonization there?
It has zero significance. So what is annexation? Annexation is taking over land by force. Israel already took over the land by force. And if you when you look around and you go to the West Bank and you go to the settlements, there isn't like a separate law for the settlers versus the Israelis that are in Tel Aviv. It's the same law. Like if you want to open up a business inside a settlement, it's the same business law that applies in the settlement as applies in Tel Aviv. There's no separation of the law. So the law already applies to the West Bank, to the settlements. The only difference is that it doesn't apply to Palestinians and to those areas of the Palestinian Authority, which is just 18% of the West Bank. It's tiny, tiny, tiny little place in space. And that's it. And so when in even the plans that Smotrich is talking about, he's saying, we're going to annex the West Bank with, get this, surprise, surprise, 82% of the West Bank. And it mirrors exactly what we see right now on the ground. Yeah. And so why am I saying that it doesn't have any impact? Because they've already done it. There already are so many settlements around. It's gone wild over the course of the past couple of years. the Israelis have built more and more settlements. There are places now in the West Bank that are quite literally, Aaron, caged in. Sinjar is one of them. The settlers have been attacking Palestinians all the time. Since October of 2023, 1,047 Palestinians have been killed. 22 communities have been wiped off the map. So all of that has already happened. It doesn't need to have a formal declaration of sovereignty. The reason that the Israelis want the formal declaration of sovereignty is they want that nail in the coffin to say, that's it. Like, they want to be able to say victory, that complete victory. But they already have everything that they want. And the only thing that they don't have is that the Palestinian Authority is still around, and that there are Palestinians who are still around. And
you've worked for the Palestinian Authority before. What are they doing these days? I mean, and talk about the position that they're in. They've sort of acted as an enforcer for Israeli occupation before as a collaborator, but they're still defiant. And Trump recently banned top Palestinian Authority officials, including Mahmoud Abbas, from even coming to New York, which is such a slap in the face, given that the PA has gone out of their way to cooperate with the U.S. and Israel.
Yeah. So the Palestinian Authority has been Israel's security subcontractor. And what that means is that they are the body that when Israel says, please arrest this person, they go in and they arrest the person that they want. And they've continued to do it all throughout this period. And you're absolutely right that Mahmoud Abbas was not allowed to go to the UN to deliver his speech, and which is very telling that Trump put together this entire plan without a single Palestinian voice in it. He didn't consult anyone. What is the PA doing now? I really don't know. I know that they have come out and said that they support this plan. I think that the reason that they've come out to say that they support this plan is because they, one, want to see an end to the genocide. And two, I think that they want to remain relevant. Beyond that, it's hard to say what it is, why they would support something that is really a horror show. And as I've said over and over again, it's a movie. We've seen this movie. We've actually seen it as a horror movie. And we know the ending. We know exactly how this ends.
Diana, you're based in Haifa, and you've written about that. As you know, because you've also written about this, people love to point to Haifa, the city, as an example that apartheid doesn't exist. I wanted you to describe what it's like living in Haifa, how it differs from other places where Palestinians live, and how it actually, far from proving that Israel is not an apartheid system, actually proves that it is.
Oh God! It's so nauseating to always have to debunk the myth, because
Right.
It's a huge myth. So Haifa is a city that in 1948 was almost entirely ethnically cleansed. There were just about 3,000 Palestinians who remained, and now when you look at the city, roughly 11% of the city's population are Palestinians. In the city of Haifa, you can be as I would like to put it, as Arab Israeli, meaning that you can be somebody who is Arab and identifies with the state of Israel. But the minute that it crosses over into being a Palestinian, the minute that you identify as being Palestinian is the minute that the full weight of the state comes down against you. And so this is what I wanted to describe. So it's not a city of coexistence. They try to claim that it is a city of coexistence, but it is absolutely not. The Palestinians who are now living in the city are primarily people who have moved to the city because of their jobs, doctors, they're lawyers, or they're working in university, etc. And despite the fact that these are people who are part of the economic elite, they are, again, treated in the same way as any other Palestinian, because this is a society that is based on supremacy. It's not. It's a racist society that's based on racial Jewish supremacy. If you're Jewish, you're considered superior. If you're not Jewish, then you are considered inferior. And so everything from being able to protest in the city, the protests are crushed. Palestinians, when they go out to protest, are crushed very severely in the city of Haifa. They're back in 2021 when there were protests going throughout the city. I remember seeing massive protests and hearing the death to Arab chants that were just going on just up outside the street from my house. So it's no different,
right?
Yeah, exactly. So there is no difference between Haifa and any other city. I do want to say one thing about where Palestinians live and why they live where they live. In 1948, Israel destroyed so many Palestinian towns and villages. And the vast majority of Palestinians who remained live still in those towns and villages. And what they want is they want to expand those towns and they want to expand those villages, but they cannot because of the racist laws that are in place. Palestinians don't want to be moving to Tel Aviv. They don't want to be moving to Haifa. They end up moving to Haifa and to Tel Aviv because effectively they have to. But that isn't a goal. That isn't a dream. And so when you're looking at a city like Haifa, these are not cities of coexistence where you're looking around and it's neighborly love. No, these are people who exist in the same space, but there's definitely no coexistence. There's no way that that people are existing with one another. And I like to say that we subexist. And that's because the same set of laws that apply anywhere across the state of Israel also apply in Haifa. And some of the most racist comments that I've heard in my lifetime have been in the city of Haifa, the city of quote unquote coexistence.
And has it become more genocidal in rhetoric, the rhetoric around you, where you live? Has it become more genocidal than it was when we last spoke? From what I found once again, disturbing but not shocking is how openly people say this stuff. So what is it like for you just like walking around the city?
Yeah, it's totally genocidal. You hear statements, you look around, and if you just like walk past cafes, you'll see loads of guns all over the place. Bumper stickers all over, lots of cars, like finish them, settle Gaza now. And it's all over the media. It's all the time. It's just like, it's a constant. You just hear it all the time. I think the best way to describe it, maybe because I don't have a lot of Israeli friends. It's hard for me to say what they're thinking, but I think the best way to describe it is to describe what I see on television. Maybe that's probably the best way to describe it. So at the beginning, on a newscast, you would see that there would be some sort of justification as to why it was that they were hitting a certain area. Like they would say, there was Hamas was hiding behind whatever. And then it became that, we have to demolish all of these houses in order for the tank to get in. I'm just repeating. I'm not saying that this is right. I'm just repeating what they would say. And so, there was like this is like kind of a justification. Now they don't even say anything. Now it's like, 150 people were killed, and there isn't, they don't even say anything. And even worse now is in the same newscast, you'll hear people say things like, there is no starvation. And then 5 minutes later, we need to starve them. Right. So like this is in the same newscast. So you're always hearing this like schizophrenic way of thinking. And is it worse than it was before? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. But then there's another cross-section of society that has completely put Gaza out of its mind. And they don't think about it. They don't talk about it. They don't do anything about it. And you see people on a daily basis who are trying to raise awareness, saying we need to end the war, we need to end the war. And again, not because of love for Palestinians, but they're trying to get Israelis to see what's going on.
And where does this all end? I mean, what do you see as what is your prediction for what comes next? And also, what is your hope? Like, if you could wave a magic wand, how would this end and what would be created in its place?
It's hard for me to say what the prediction is going to be, right? I was just talking to a friend the other day who came out of Gaza. He volunteered in Gaza as a doctor. And he came out after 3 months and he was 50 pounds lighter. And this is a guy who did not have 50 pounds to lose. Just this morning, I spoke to a friend who is displaced, who went from Gaza City to Deir al-Balah. Again, has lost so much weight. And both of them are telling me these just horrific, apocalyptic, like the scenes are apocalyptic. The stories that they're telling me are awful. Everything from the doctor telling me how they've had to create makeshift hospitals to come up with new medicines, to the levels of the diseases that they're seeing now that he said, I saw diseases that I learned about in medical school that I've never seen in my lifetime. This is an emergency doctor. So I think that in terms of where we're at, the damage is there, and it's like the secondary and if people aren't going to die from the direct bombs, it's the secondary and the tertiary and the toxicity. Like it's so bad, Katie, from everything that I'm hearing. It's so bad and only getting worse. And nobody has not this Trump plan, not anybody has in their mind to make it better. They're singularly focused on just the Israelis and not anything beyond that. So it's hard for me to say where we are going. On the Israeli side, I think the Israelis are also acknowledging this. And Scifi-level was saying this earlier today. The billions that you were talking about, Aaron, of money that they had poured into creating this wonderful image. It's going to take hundreds of billions to try to recreate that. And I don't think it's ever going to be recreated. I don't think that they'll ever be able to recreate that image. The damage is done. But where does it leave people? I don't know. I really don't know. The numbers are terrifying. There was a poll that came out. It's an old poll now, 6 months old, but I don't think the numbers are different. Where it said that 82% of Israelis would like to see Gaza completely ethnically cleansed, and 56% would like to see Palestinians who hold Israeli citizenship removed from the country. That number increases the younger you go. So it's frightening. It's frightening.
Diana Buttu, thank you so much as always for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
As always, it's so enlightening to hear from Diana Buttu. She has such important insights and is so clear-headed in her analysis. So we're so grateful to her.
And stayed up very late to join us. So thank you so much to Diana Buttu. And thank you for tuning in, Useful Idiots. We're not paywalling this episode so everyone can see the full interview with Diana Buttu. If you want to support the show, go to our website, usefulidiots.podcast.com.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to and watching Useful Idiots. For extended episodes, bonus content, and our weekly Thursday Throwdown episode, please subscribe at usefulidiotspodcast.com. Support the show for free by subscribing on YouTube, Rumble, and wherever you get your podcasts. And if you like the podcast, don't forget to rate and review. You can also follow us on Twitter at UsefulIdiotPod. Thanks for supporting independent media. We'll see you next time.